Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today I'm stuck this Bava Batra, Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph. We're going to begin on Kuf Chaf Amud Beis, 4 lines in the bottom. So in yesterday's Daf, we were discussing when it comes to the din of Hafaras Nedarim and Hataras Nedarim, there are ways in which, again, a neder can be removed. And that's something which is for all future generations. Even though it does say Zehadavar, that's nonetheless an exclusion, that it's still for all future generations. Now, Hafaras Nedarim could be with 3 hedyotos, 3 common people, or with 1 mumche. When it comes to a husband, he's Mayfair, a chacham is not Mayfair. However, when it comes to the chacham, he's Matir Nedarim. Okay. Now, we continue on 4 lines on the bottom with Beis Shammai, the Leisa Hu Gzer Shava. That's all based on Gzer Shava. So Hafaras Nedarim b'shlosh hedyotos v'nalahu. So we only learned out through Gzer Shava this notion of being able to be made for a neder with 3 hedyotos. But according to him, how does he learn it out? So Nafkohu Minisanya. He learns it out from the following pasuk. V'davar Moshe es moadi Hashem b'nei Yisrael. So Rabbi Yosef Glili Yemer, we continue to Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Moadi Hashem Nemru. So it already says Moadi Hashem, the festivals, Shabbos Bereshis Lo Nemra. But it doesn't mention anything when it comes to a typical Shabbos of the week. So that's what's come to tell us. That it's the Moadi Hashem as opposed to Shabbos Bereshis. So again, this is going to be explained. Benazai Omer Moadi Hashem Nemru, Hafaras Nedarim Lo Nemru. It's only Moadi Hashem and not Hafaras Nedarim. Okay. Now, Rabbi Yossi ben Nasan Gamrula Laha Masnisa Voyadale Pirusha. He didn't really understand this explanation. Also, bastard Rav Sheshis Narda. So he went to Narda. Vo Ashkache. He didn't find anyone. So also Basu Mechoizel. He went to Mechoizel, and Ashkache found someone that would be able to explain this. Armalei. My Moadi Hashem Never Shabbos Bereshis Lo Nemra. What does that mean? So Amalei Moadi Hashem Srich and Kiddush Beistin Shabbos Bereshis Eno Sricha Kiddush Beistin. What it means is that, says Rashbam, Olam Yom Shli Shabbos Hu Kiddush Beistin. You don't need to be Mekadesh the day because it's already sanctified. So we say Mekadesh Shabbos. Hashem's Mekadesh the Shabbos. We don't need a Beistin to do it. However, as we say on Yom Tov, we say Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim, that it's actually we, the ones that are mekadosh it through a beis din. So Savdach Damino Hoyoksiv Gabi Moados, since Shabbos is mentioned by Moados, Tiboy Kiddush beis din Kamoados. Maybe beis din does need to be mekadosh. Kamashmon, it's not necessary. My Moadi Hashem, Never Hafaras Nedarim Lo Nemer. What does that mean? That by Moadi Hashem Nemer and Hafaras Nedarim. So Moadi Hashem Sricha Mumche. In order to be able to sanctify a day, you need mumchen. Hafaras Nedarim is Sricha Mumchen. You don't need mumchen. That's why he said even Gibel Hedyotos is enough. I have a Harashi Matos Ksiv, which is mashma you do need. So I'm Rav Chista, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Yochanan Mumchen. All you need is a Yochanan Mumchen, and that would be enough. So good Rashbam. So Moadi Hashem Sricha Mumchen. V'loi Mekadshe Begimel Hedyotos. Hafaras Nedarim. You can't just use 3 simple people. V'lo b'yochid mumche, not 1 person, Hafaras Nedarim. Elo b'shloish mumche, need 3. Einocha mumche b'Yisrael Yosem and Moshe Rabbeinu, because we see that Moshe was certainly mumche. V'kaimilei rachmana ad ika Aharon bahadoch. And the drasha, as we said, the pasuk says, V'yamar Hashem al Moshe v'el Aharon. Ha'chodesh is elchem, kachem mumchem. V'in based in shakol moisim and oleh noid echad. So you have Moshe and Aaron, and in based in Shakol, so you need a 3rd. Now we have the famous Gemara in Kedushin, rather in Masechtas Tainus. Tanan Hasam. So we learned in the Mishnah over there, these are the 2 happiest days in the world. And we'll explain why. So first of all, Shebehen B'nai Yisrael Yaitzeis B'Kli Lavan, girls used to go out, Sholin, and they would borrow the clothes, not to embarrass someone who doesn't have. Which some people explain is the reason why, as Tosfos in Masechtas Megillah explains, the reason why we read about the Arayos on Yom Kippur is because that's a time of marriage and making sure that they're marrying the proper person. So Bishlam Yom Kippurim who Slicha Mechila Yom Shinamo Luchas Achraynos makes sense because after all, it's a day of Mechila, so it's a great day of starting over, and it's also the day in which the second set of luchos were given to us. Why? So the Rashbam explains this, which we'll see. It says B'shish Yiroi B'shiva B'nis B'Sivan L'Kabel Luchos Rishonos. So we're Mekabel the luchos on the 7th day of Sivan. V'Yared B'Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, and then he came down 40 days later on the 17th of Tammuz, down to B'Sof Arba'im Yom, which of course is when he noticed that we're engaged in the Egel HaZahav, and he broke the Luchos, which was on Shivas of Tammuz, which was one of the 5 reasons the Gemara Titans talks about why we fast on the 17th of Tammuz. Yudches, he went back up. Hashem forgave us. Make a second set. He came down on the 20th of Av. So he took the pieces, another 40 days, so basically he went up on Rosh Chodesh Elul, so that's 30 days, and then 10 days later is the 10th of Tishrei, which is Yom Kippur. V'yod Tishrei hu Yom Kippurim nisras ha'makam b'simcha l'Yisrael v'yosah hayam min Moshe v'luchos b'yadai. So he had his luchos. El Chamisha Asaba'amina Maihi. So what's so special about the 15th of Av? I mean, and especially it's just like strange. It's like 6 days after Tisha B'av. The saddest day and the happiest day are 6 days apart. So I mean, there's reason. And this is the reason why we mention this, because the Isser of marrying outside of your Shevet was only for that one generation, not for future generations. My Darsh, because Zad Dover, as we saw already in yesterday's Daf. Davar Zeli, Badar Zel was only in that generation. Answer number 1. Answer number 2 is Rabbi Barachana. So at a certain time, because of Plagish Begiva, they answered people to marry into the Shevet ben Yamin. They swore lemor, don't give your daughter to Shevet ben Yamin. So my Darsh Menu says Mimenu v'lo b'banenu. It was only for that generation. So it's another reason to rejoice, and there's also, these are all linked to marriage. It makes sense why on the 15th of Av they were dancing, they were trying to find a chassan and kala, they were matching young men and women together for marriage, because that was a time that shvatim were allowed. So there was more opportunities for them to get married, as well as Shevet ben Yamin. Rav Dimi bar Yosef Aimer Rav Nachman Yom Shekol Bo Yimei Midbar. It's actually linked to Tisha B'av because they stopped dying after 40 years. The Amar Mar Ad Shaloi Kol Meisi Midbar, up until that point in time, as we continue to Kuf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, Lo Hayadibri Moshe. Hashem didn't have the close connection to Moshe Pel Peh as it was before. How Shenemar. Vayhi kasher kamu kol anshei melchama lomos meker ba'am v'samachlei v'daber Hashem Elai lemor Elai haya hadibor. So eventually Hashem spoke again, this intimate connection to Moshe. So it's another interesting thing. It's communication. So a marriage we see is pal peh. So avol im hutzruchu ledibor k'gayin l'maisa b'maisa d'kairach shay achar maisa meragam hayadaber al yedei Malach or Betumim. So Hashem actually didn't speak to him in times of Kairach. So you can understand even why the heavier level of tension that Moshe felt when there was Kairach l'chaladasa going against him. He didn't have that connection because he was in the midbar. Ul Aimer Yom Shebita Boy Hashem ben Eile Pardei Sais. It was a time in which Hashem stopped the watchman. Shahayishiv Yerabim al Hadrachim Shal Yel Yisrael Lo Regel. So Yerubim in the Vat, he put people to guard to make sure that people were not oil regel. And the Gemara elsewhere talks about because he was against Rechavam, who came from Beis David, and only people who could sit in the Azar is Beis David. And Yerubim, who wasn't really fit Malchus, so therefore he was embarrassed, therefore he basically didn't want anyone to go there. So therefore we see that again that there was this ability of movement, there was this openness of being able to travel and to see new things, and therefore it makes sense again when it comes to marriage, in which now you could go to Yerushalayim, you can go to all these different places, and you have more opportunities for marriage. A day in which of chesed, a great level of chesed shel emes, and a day in which the harugi Beitar, the people that were killed in Beitar, they were finally able to be buried, as the Gemara in Gittin, which talks about the Chorban with Kamsa Mar Kamsa, brings down Beitar as well. On that day, Tignu b'yavna hatoiv ha'meitiv, which is part of Berachas Hamazon. Hatoiv shlo hitzrichu, that the remains didn't spoil. Ha'meitiv shnitnu l'kvur, they were buried. Rav Yosef ben Tavai Yom shepoiskin by malichos eitzim l'maracha. They stopped cutting the wood for the mizbeach in that time. Tanya Rabbi Lezer Gadol Omer Kivan shehigia chamishas ba'av. Once it reaches that time of the year, Tashish Koicha Shachama, the sun is not as strong, summer's ending. That's why they stopped cutting the wood, because the wood, when it was very hot, it would not get moist. It would remain very, very dry. However, afterwards it became problematic, and therefore, because it would maybe be filled with worms and the like, which cannot obviously be used on the Mizbeach, so they stopped using it. So therefore this was a time when they celebrated that, okay, we don't need to cut wood anymore. Tanya Belezer Gadol Omer Kivachi Gih Chamishos Ba'av Tashas Koicha Shalchama V'Hoy Karson Eitzam Maracha Amar Master V'Karule Yom Tavar Magal. They used to call it the day of the breaking of the sickle. Mekan Ve'elach the Ma'is of Yosef. So we see that as the sun is setting a little bit earlier, which means we have less days of sunlight, more hours of darkness, more hours at night, so you have more opportunity to learn at night. So Mekan Ve'elach the Ma'is of Yosef. You should increase your learning, you'll increase. Shin the Ma'is of Yosef. But if you don't increase, then you're going to fall back. So my Yosef, what does that mean literally? So Tana Rabbi Yosef, Tikbere Imei. Let's look at Rashbam. Shiyomus b'chatzi yomov. It means that you'll die half of your life, as it says in Megillas Esther. B'zichrom yosum mizarim moshin kalyu. So what does this mean? Because it says Rashbam, min halayilad hayoim al hayoim l'shnois yosef yomim. There's extra days. Shematay shehaleos marichin. So you have more time at night. Yomim miskatzrin. And your days are shorter. Sarach la'asak b'limuda gabel laila. You have to learn gam b'layla. It doesn't mean you have to stop learning it during the day, even though there's less hours in the day. No, it means you definitely should take advantage of your time at night. Okay, and dual moisav Yosef, you don't increase, you decrease. This is an interesting phenomena that a lot of motivators say, that you work from 9 to 5. Shkoyach, what do you do from 5 to 9 for those 16 hours? Okay, you sleep. Hopefully 7 hours, 8 hours. What are you doing for all those hours? Okay, maybe you're, hopefully if you have a family, you have responsibilities, but are you wasting those hours? If you're not increasing, you're decreasing. So you have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of those hours, and if you don't, you're actually losing out. Tanurban. Let's slow down. Let's look at question 5. So Eilu Ma'arais Haya B'Tuba Av Shememnekein Asu Yomtiv. 4 out of 5. So one we said is that Shvatim are allowed to marry another. People are allowed to start marrying to Shevet ben Yamin. The say Midbar stopped dying, and it's explained is because they lied down and they thought maybe they miscalculated. Moses the 15th, they saw that the moon was already full, and therefore they understood Tisha B'Av had already passed, and therefore the Gzera is over. The 4th is about the eitzim, the wood, and also number 5 about the kfura of those who died in Beitar. Okay, Tanur Abanan. Shiva kiplu es kol oilum kuloi. There's actually 7 individuals that encompassed the entirety of the world. In other words, if you just had those 7 people, they lived from the beginning of the world until this moment in time. So who do you have? So first of all, Metushelach Ra Adam. Metushelach, so he actually saw Adam Arishain. Metushelach lived 969 years. Methuselah, Shem Ra Metushelach. Metushelach, who actually died before the Mabul, but Noach's son Shem was alive during that time. Yaakov Ra Shem. Yaakov saw Shem, and in fact there was yeshiva Shem ve'ever. Amram Roas Yaakov. Amram, the father of Moshe, saw Yaakov, and that obviously we have to figure out how is that. So the Rashbam says Svarhu Shari Kahas Aviv. His Kahas was his father. Miyardim Mitzrayim Hoya, among those who left Mitzrayim, who went down to Mitzrayim rather. He lived for 17 years. And during the 17 last years of Yaakov's life, he was in Egypt. Noilad Amram Lakahas. Shahari Benoi Harishan Haya Kas Amram Yitzar. The children of Kahas was Amram and Yitzar. So Yitzar probably did see Amram probably did see Yaakov. Achia Hashiloini Ra es Amram. Achia Hashiloini saw Amram. Okay. And Eliyahu Ra es Achia Hashiloini. V'hadayin Kayim. Eliyahu Hanavi is still alive. V'achia Hashiloini Ra es Amram. Is that true? V'aksiv V'oinois v'hem ish kim kol ben yifon v'yeshu ben nun. The only people that escaped the Gezerah of dying in the Midbar was just Yoshua and Kalev. So how could you say Achia Hashiloini survived it? That he was then able to see Eliyahu, obviously many years later on. So Rav Hamnuna lo nigzer Gezerah al shifta shalevi. So Achia Hashiloini, he came from the Shevet Levi, and there was no Gezerah on them because there was no Gezerah against the whole Shevet. It was only the rest of the Klai. So the Chsiv b'midbar hazeh yiplu pigreichem v'chol pikudechem v'chol misparchem l'ben esrim shana v'mala. All of those who were counted from 20 and above. What is that drasha? Mishipakadam miben esrim yatsa shivta shalevish magdam miben shleishim. Now, when it came to the Bnei Levi, in order to know when they were able to be fit for the avoda, it was 30. It was 25. They did training, apprenticeship until they were 30, but they were counted at 30, from 30 to 50. So therefore, they were not part of the 20-year-old calculation, and therefore they were actually spared. You're telling me from the rest of the Shvatim no one came up? They were in the days of Yaakov, which means they were over 20 years old. They didn't die until later. That even though we were successful in the days of Yeshua conquering Yericho, but we had issues in battling of Ai, because Achav took the spoils of Yericho, which wasn't allowed, and 36 people died. But there's actually 36 people that died. It was tragic. Doesn't say 36. Like this referring to Yair ben Menashe, Sheshakal Krubishal Sanhedrin. He was equal to the majority of the Sanhedrin, which is 36, because the Sanhedrin is 70, so the majority of that's 36. So anyway, we see clearly that Yair ben Menashe was alive until the time of the battle of Ai. Very interesting. The Gezerah was not on anyone under 20, but was also not on anyone who was over 60. So since Yair ben Menashe was already over 60, so there was no Gezerah on him. And therefore he could have gone into Eretz Yisrael. When it says the only Yeshua and Kalev entered, it means those who are in the age bracket between 20 and 60. Lo al pochis ben esrim dechsim ben esrim shon b'mal. Lo yesrim ben sheishim, also not above 60. Gomer v'mal me'erchen. We went out from the dinim of erchen. Mal hon yosim ben shishim kapachas ben chav. Avkan yosim ben shishim kapachas ben esrim. Now when it comes to the dinim of erchen, it's the same thing. That the amount that you have to pay under 20 is the same you have to pay over 60. Says the Rashba, v'hachanami ki hechi dum muchlik pachas ben esrim min agzeira shel yesim ben chav hu adin liyasser al ben shishim, also above 60. They're not part of the gezeira. V'ikol member now with the Lord nimnu bahu cheshbon. They were not part of that cheshbon. We'll stop there, and let's maybe see a couple more questions. Question 6. Yak mehemanchi I kishloishim shishim anashim es mi kaira hakasa kishloishim v'shisha ir. And the answer is Yair ben Menashe, who died in the battle of Ai, because he was shokul, he was so great, he was equal to the Roiv of the Sanhedrin. TA 15. Madua achia hashiloni lo hoya b'gzeres mesei midbar. Why was he not included in this calculation? So two answers: either because he came from Shevet Levi, or because he was above 60 years old. That's TA 15. So either because he came from Shevet Levi, alternatively because he was above 60 years old. TB 16. Matai hu yoim taver magol. So that's of course on the 15th of Av. And why is it called that? So I wrote Tu b'Av. Zeh hayoyim shehem gaimer u'mafsikin lichrois es ha'etzim b'shvil hamizbeach b'shvil hachama zarachas v'etz lo yavesh kol kach achrizeh kodem lezeh. It's not exactly right, but that's the idea, that once the sun is no longer so powerful, then because of that, the wood is no longer fit for the mizbeach. Ad kan.